Elizabeth Darchie, but call me Beth. Short, then don't want to be called Liz. Beth.
That was it? Give a little history.
I've been dancing for over 40 years. Started off as, well, I'm just going to start off with the hustle and moving on to ballroom and still with hustle. But yes, 40 years.
Ron Bass, hustle since 1975-ish. Went from hustle and back to hustle. Still in the hustle world, still active. Admiring these guys.
Hi, I'm Lisa Xia, and I've been dancing this dance for over 40 years. I stopped counting at 40, but this is a dance that you love and feel so much passion for, and you never stop doing it. So I've been dancing this dance for over 40 years and loving it every step I take. It's about finding the joy in every moment that you're on the dance floor and dancing it without fear, right? I always say you have to be fearless when you're in the motion. You have to feel your body and feel sexy and stay connected to your partner, but you have an opportunity to be creative and to express yourself in many ways. And I love it, and I'll always be a part of this community.
Basically summed it up.
Oh, thank you. That's it.
Louis Orlando, I started going out in 72. I started going out before hustle was really starting. I kind of got into it around 73. I started noticing people doing this kind of partnership dance, and it just caught my eye, caught my attention, and after that I just really got into it. I enjoyed the excitement of it, meeting the people, starting competing with it, and just from there it brought me up to where I am today with it. Still doing it, still keeping up with it, still enjoying it, keeping up with the times. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
Ron?
Now it's your turn. Questions?
I have a question.
You're up.
All right. My name is Billy, and I live in Orlando, Florida. And I love hustle. Obviously, we all do, right? So I thought hustle had died. I literally thought it died. I'm in the ballroom community, and I've been struggling through hustle with my ballroom friends because they just don't know how to do it the way we do it here. And I found the And123 website, not website, the YouTube page about 3 months ago, and my brain exploded. And I said, wow, it's not dead. Not only is it not dead, it's alive and thriving, and it seems to be making a comeback. So now I'm here because you can't keep me away. And now I live in Orlando, and I want to bring it to Orlando. So my question, I know it's a long time to get to the question, but my question is, what's your best advice for me to help? I'm by myself trying to do this. I want to help bring hustle alive, OG hustle alive in Orlando.
Who has the site Hustle Orlando? Is that yours?
Well, there's two sites. There's one with almost 200 followers, another one with less than that. I don't know if you're on my site or not. The other site was created by a person who lives in Dallas, Texas.
Nice.
And,
Good fit.
and then my site, I'm in Orlando,
Yeah,
and I'm
okay.
posting content every single
Awesome.
day.
That's the beginning.
That's
Get
what I'm
people
doing.
involved, because there's a lot of people like you who didn't know it's still alive. It never went anywhere.
Right.
It just was
Which is
underground
exciting.
and just not getting the
That's it.
exposure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for those who didn't know that the dance was still going, we took it underground, which means once that Saturday Night Fever came out and the whole hype of that, we all went underground to after-hour clubs and everything and found areas where we could dance and everything. So it never stopped. And then it started evolving until 1995 when Hustle USA came alive. That's when it started bringing everybody around. And it started to grow. So, and now I'm glad that you saw the video, because that's what a lot of us are trying to do, to get people to see that it's still growing and it's a fun dance And that's basically what you would need to do in order to promote it in a sense. You would have to start sending out some videos or some kind of advertisement to let people know that it still exists.
And also, I just want to remind everyone that Ron has had Dance Talk, the online newsletter, for many, many years. He's kept this thing alive online, letting everyone know what events are happening and when and where, all over nationally. And so, you know, Dance
Anything we
Talk,
can do to help you.
Dance Talk is a way of finding out what's happening.
That's interesting you
Across
say
the
that
states.
because you submitted something recently and I reshared your dance talk. And by the way, I'm happy to meet you. I didn't know the name to the face. So I did share that dance talk information
Great.
to my page, my house page.
Awesome.
So thank you for that. That's good.
Anything to add, guys?
I came in late, but I do have a thought.
Okay. Kim Bannerman.
Yay.
I'm Kim Bannerman, and I'm from Massachusetts, and I know what it's like to be in an island for hustle. Okay, I am hustle in the New England region, pretty much. It exists in smaller ways as part of other studios, but as a primary source of hustle. But I also am aware of people who have made hustle happen in their own backyard. And it's like if you build it, people can come because they'll see it, they'll like it, they'll learn about it. So there was a young woman who learned how to DJ, and she got something going in Arizona because she loved to dance and she wanted more people to do it with her, and she wanted to do it not just at the events when she went. So I applaud you for wanting to make this thing happen, and that it is possible. There's pockets happening all over, and it only takes one person to love our dance.
Are you good?
Testing.
Beautifully done.
Who else?
Oh, I think the question about hustle in general return. And I hear New York hustle. Is there a difference between hustle and are they different types? And which one are we
New
learning
York
here?
hustle and Latin hustle and
Are we learning New York hustle?
Lori? We talk about that all the time, Lori.
Slowly I turn. I don't answer
New
that.
York hustle. Go ahead. Is it bit?
No, Lori's going to answer.
I'm going to try and see. My voice is, I have developed a little rundownness here in my voice and cold and congestion. So I started on Long Island, which is where I'm from, and I was going to NYU to be an actress. And my parents met on the dance floor, on the social dance floor. So I grew up with rumbas and cha-chas and foxtrots and the American Songbook. And my sisters and I loved music and dancing. And someone that I had done a musical with came into a restaurant where I was waitressing, and she said, they're hiring dance teachers. And the hustle was just popular at the time. So I went, and there was a huge floor of people that were auditioning for this job. And every day I would go in, and there were fewer and fewer people. And we had to learn how to lead and follow and teach and written exams. It was like really hard to get this job. So finally whittled down to Paul Pellicoro, myself, if you know Paul, and another couple. And they said, I know you want to learn the hustle, but you have to learn all the ballroom dances. So I said, that's great, because I grew up listening to that, and I want to learn all the ballroom dances. So that's my history. A lot of people learn in clubs, they learn in the street. My social dance career was started in a dance studio. And we had to learn all the dances. And so I always was in love with the hustle, but I also became a professional ballroom dancer. And at the time we were in training class, and they said, this is where the hustle started. At first it was the American hustle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then they said there's a swing hustle. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. And they said there was the Latin hustle. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6. Then there was the rope hustle. Now we're doing something called the 3-count hustle. And that's what we were doing when I learned to dance. We were going out clubbing every night. We were obsessed, we were maniacs, and it was the 3-count hustle. We didn't call it the New York hustle, we did not call it the Latin hustle, we just called it hustle. And the version that stuck was 3-count hustle, and I believe that's what we're still doing. And then there became other versions, other regions, and other regions of the hustle where,
New style.
no, new style's much later. I'm talking about some people that were teaching 1-2 and different rhythms. But I feel like we've been calling it hustle for so long. And now all of a sudden, in the last, I don't want to say decade, but there's been the development of new style hustle, which makes it sound like, okay, there's old hustle and now there's new hustle. And now people are all referring to hustle as Latin hustle. And we're like, wait a minute. Wasn't that like the original hustle, but didn't we evolve past that? So now we're going back to calling it the Latin hustle. And then people say, is that a new dance? Is that different than the hustle, the Latin hustle? And I understand the motivation for calling it that because a lot of the salsa community is now learning the hustle and it's being taught in Europe. And the promoters of the salsa events want to get the salseros in doing it and trying to edify the community and build up more dancers and to get the salsa people. I think by calling it the Latin hustle, it's a way of getting salsa people. Oh, it's the Latin hustle. But to me, it's hustle. I'm from New York. It's a New York hustle. But, it's, I don't know. I think it might be a little confusing to answer your question. That's why you asked the question. What's going on? New style, Latin, New York. I thought we just kind of hung on to this hustle for the last 3 decades. Started in the first decade, it was all over the map. But I understand it. The main thing is to get people to fall in love with hustle like all of us have, and that's why we're here 4 decades later sitting here talking to you. And while you're here, instead of enjoying this beautiful day in Newark, New Jersey, you're in here hearing our stories because you love it too. And we feel the more we can do, and whatever we call it, to get people to bring the dance back, because Beth is exactly right. When I say, I told you I cannot do short stories. I just can't. My voice is warming up now. But when I started my dances, people have heard this story a million times. I was working on a cruise ship, and I came off the ship, and I wanted a dance partner. So my friend Eddie Simon said, well, I know someone looking for a salsa partner. So I said, great, I'll do that. I called him up, and he said, I found a partner, but I have this dance studio, and I do salsa parties, but they're not doing great. You want to do a hustle party? And I went, what? I said, the hustle's dead. Why would I want to do the hustle party? This was right after 9/11. And I was like, what do you, the hustle? Hustle, who does the hustle? There were no parties going on the weekends, so I happened to go to Miami to the NJHC, and I was like, wow, people are doing the hustle. And it was this music that reminded me of when I was young and carefree, and we didn't use terrorism. That was a word in our vocabulary. There was no AIDS. There was no COVID. It was like things that since then, it was just when we danced, we were very carefree, weren't we? Life was a party. If you see my t-shirts that I created up there, life's a party. And that was, of course there was a lot of going on, but there was no war. We didn't have a lot of the things that these generations have where we're killing the planet on them. And, we're having a lot of division in the country. Of course, we've always had that, but not as bad as it's been the last few years. But, it was a very carefree time, and this event reminded me of that. And I went back and I said to the partner in the party, I said, I'm going to do this because it brought joy to me and it lifted my spirits and it was very therapeutic. So I said, if I can do this for me, I can do it for all of us. And the parties were underground, and I used my experience as a ballroom dancer in all the dance studios in New York City, and I did a traveling dance event, like a competition at Stepping Out, at Dance Sport, at Center Cameron, all the 92nd Street Y, and I built my party. And I think it was like a renaissance, not me, but at the time, it was the right person at the right time started this renaissance of hustle coming back and being more popular. Now I can't even get a booking on the weekend because everybody, I got Friday, I have Saturday. In those days, there were no Fridays and Saturdays, but so what was my last name? I haven't slept much in the last month. I lost my connecting point. Shoot.
Anyway, it was really,
The Renaissance.
it was like really interesting to hear that progression of why you, because I didn't know that history about you and why you, because in the UK and other parts of Europe, we don't have this sort of session thing as much.
We don't normally either, it's a
I
new
come
thing.
here and it feels like there's an event to go like every other night in New York. There's something happening. And that's like really special.
Well, before COVID, there
Yeah.
was. Honestly, it wasn't when I started my party. It was, right, as I said, right after 9/11. And, you know, in New York, we were really, I mean, planes would go by and we'd go like this. We were traumatized, you know,
PTSD.
after 9/11. And this was really great, you know. And a lot of our generation got married around the time when we became dance teachers and got in the dance business and were into dancing. And a lot of people the kids are grown up or they got divorced. And it was like, wow, you're still doing the hustle? Right? You're still doing that reminds me when I was a kid, wow. And if say they were getting divorced or whatever, or they lost a spouse, it was like, I don't have to go to a bar to meet people, to socialize. I could go to a dance party, even by myself. And I mean, you'd never go to a bar by yourself, but you'd go to a dance party by yourself because you walk in the door and you immediately have all these friends. You know, you don't even know what they do for a living or, you know, what their last name is, but you have an immediate group of friends. And so that was what was going on for many years. And as I said, I was starting to scramble to like, I can't get, you know, everybody owns nights now. Then of course we shut down in 2020. And now we're building back. It's still, you know, a slow process. But someone else talk. Next question.
Yes, next question.
Does anybody know how the original name Hustle came about? Who named the dance? Ron, you're the story, right? Right, he's back there.
Do you think it's from the Van McCoy song?
No.
No.
Dance was already
Before
happening.
that?
I think it had to do with the energy of the
Yeah.
dance. You had to hustle to do it.
Louis, would you know that?
You know, when I started going out, I was going out before that even, I mean, I started on 72, I was going to clubs, but at
It was
that
going out
time.
before they even named it the hustle.
Yeah, they didn't really have anything. And at that time when I was going out, there was only certain, when I was going out, there was no, I gotta watch how I clarify this, white people going out to clubs. I found most of the clubs I started going out to were Hispanic and black. It just,
The way it was.
it's just the way it was. I didn't really see that many of that type of thing. And then from there, like I said, it was about 73, I just started going to certain places, and I lived in Jersey, so I was always traveling. And I just started going to different little places in New York, and I came across one individual was Limelight, another Leisure Dan, but I'm talking about clubs from 73, 74, and I just started Joyce Sans, and I just started seeing these people doing this dance, and I just was enthralled with it, and I started watching them do it, and I started picking it up. Little by little, I went there every night, wherever I saw they were dancing or hear about it. I started asking people and talking to them, and I'd be sitting there with my mouth open looking at them. And then just started watching, picking it up, and then one thing led to another, and then I found that these, actually, it still was still underground until that movie came out. Once that movie came out, then everybody came out of the woodwork. It was like the next day, everyone just came out of the woodwork. And I noticed then when there was starting to be a change. But by that time, people were already hustling, and then that movie just really promoted it for a while. And then after that, things kind of slowed down after that, after everybody got out and had a taste of it. I think like 2 or 3 years later, I noticed it was a real
Revolt.
yeah, it was a big change in it after that. But
So when you were watching the dance and were fascinated by it, did you know what the dance was called?
Not really. I mean, I said, I'm looking at them and watching them do it, and I just said, I gotta learn this. It just caught my eye, and when I first started doing it, it was like a 3-step thing. I don't remember.
Breakdown hustle.
Something, it was not even a,
Or there was a group.
first was a side by side, then a 3 thing, and then a,
Yeah, there was.
I don't know,
There
4
were about
thing.
20 different hustles at the heyday, line dances, partner dances, all different things.
Tango
And-
hustle.
And the thing that I was going to point out is that in all dances, the music came first. And then people would want to dance.
Right.
So initially, it was mostly called disco. Okay, so they identified the musical form, disco, and
That's
people wanted to do it. And it became a marriage between swing and salsa, I believe. Those two dance forms went
And
together.
ballroom,
Yeah,
grapevines,
yeah, they
traveling steps.
well, I call hustle the universal borrower. Anything it ever saw that it thought was cool in any dance, it put it in the hustle. So it would borrow from everywhere. But what was happening was that studios were getting the huge demand after the movie to teach this dance. Up till then, it wasn't really considered part of the in crowd so much. And they were actually going out to clubs, seeing good dancers, and offering to pay them to videotape them at their studios so that they could study the tapes in order to teach it to their students. So it was truly coming from, you know, the clubs in response to the new musical form. Up in Massachusetts, I grew up in New Jersey, so I did a lot of my dancing with everybody here, but I unfortunately lived up in Massachusetts, and I used to have to commute down once a month for my hustle fix. But there was one big dance center called the Joy of Movement Center, and it had locations all over, and they made a fortune teaching hustle. Their mistake was they taught 4 levels of hustle, and then their staff never learned anything more. And I have to give credit to this dance and the people around you. They have never stopped evolving this dance and coming up with new ideas and wonderful things to include in this dance. It is still growing and evolving and changing and exciting because of that. It hasn't been boxed up and codified like this is it. And it allows for a lot of personal expression. So what happened is, unfortunately, I blame Joy of Movement not only for the boom, but also for some of the death that happened up in Massachusetts, because there was no place for the students to go after they did the 4 levels at the Joy of Movement. But that's also what gave me my job, because I would come back from New York and go dancing from the club, and people would come up and say, "Oh my God, where did you learn that? Where can I learn it? Do you teach?" So yeah, New York was always a source.
I have a question for Kim. Kim, in New England and Massachusetts, do you codify hustle as one particular thing? Is
Right.
it Latin hustle, New York hustle, LA hustle, whatever, or do you just call it
I'll
hustle?
answer that in a second, but Lori, what did you want to add on?
Well, you said something, someone said something that I thought might be of interest. Music. Now, the movie Saturday Night Fever came out, and we were dancing to disco, but there's the Philly sound, and there's different styles of disco, right? But the movie came out, and it brought what we were doing into popularity, to the people's television in their living room, and it was a big hit, you know, and everybody wanted to go out to the clubs. And we used to have the clubs to ourselves. All of a sudden, the clubs were packed, and there was no room to dance anymore. And that's how we started this whole shark attack, or there's many names for it that Stephen taught the class in cutting in, and we would make a circle, because where we used to have the whole dance floor, now we had to create a dance floor with our bodies, and we'd make a circle, and the lucky girl, usually one lucky girl. No, she was always lucky. The girls always wanted to be the girl in the center, and the guys would cut in and cut in. And I guess if you went to gay bars, I guess it was the guy in the middle, someone. But we created our own dance floor, and this is how we continued to exist during this popularity of Saturday Night Fever. But I have another thought about this, and it has to do with money and the music industry. And I'm not a historian, I'm not really someone I feel is really capable of saying this, but if you remember that fatal day for disco when rock and roll wanted to take over the disco industry and they decided to bring your albums to this football field and burn your disco albums, and they declared disco is dead. So culturally, they decided that they're going to move on, and what was popular at the time, which was disco, now disco's dead. And I have to assume it has to do with money and big business and
Pushback.
yeah. So I think that really hurt.
DJs replaced the bands.
Yeah, and yeah, we had all of these orchestrations, and that's also, maybe technology also changed things. So there's a lot of factors. You know,
I
I
also
don't,
would say when disco was hot, unfortunately, people like Ethel Merman released a disco album. Please don't go find it and listen to it, please. I mean, Barbra Streisand put out a disco chart. It was
Except we never danced to that music.
You don't
But I'm
try.
saying
There was no way you would find us on the dance floor with that music.
absolutely.
no business.
No, but I'm just saying, it's like anything, you know, we have the benefit of history that has already culled through classical music, so we listen most commonly to the best of the best, and thank God for us at this point, a lot of that stuff is, and our DJs don't fish in those ponds.
Any other question? Oh, Jackson.
Kind of following up on that, what was the influence or the story behind, I think, a lot of the queer history, the gay bars, and their influence on the revival or the death of it? Because I had the impression that maybe, you know, part of the AIDS epidemic actually took out a lot of hustle dancers
Oh, wow, yeah.
because of that.
He's right, the 80s. I'm going to
We lost a lot.
let
of
other people talk, but I just want to say that the best clubs were the gay bars back in my day.
at that
The
point.
music was the best,
We lost a lot.
and people don't talk about that enough. Here we go.
I heard Lisa's
Sorry. No, we lost a lot of people in the 80s, and it was heartbreaking because there was so much talent that didn't have a chance to thrive at that moment in time. But back in the 70s was such a fascinating time for this dance. It was growing and it was underground, and the music, if you'd go to the Ice Palace where it was a gay club, and we'd all go there, straight, black, white, gay. It was all inclusive all the time, and some of the best dancers were gay. They were incredible the way they were creating back in the day. And honestly, we didn't have phones, we didn't have internet, but we knew what club was happening on any given night because it was that exciting and everybody wanted to be involved. You know, just the opening of Studio 54, which actually Frank did the opening show that night at Studio 54. Frank's back there. Yeah, and everyone was there, from every celebrity, Michael Jackson, you know, everyone that was anyone was there. And it was such a massive moment in time. It was in the zeitgeist, and everybody wanted to be involved in that disco era. And what we were doing was like what no one else was doing. You know, we were very competitive, and we were at every club every night, and we were in those circles, and we were creating this dance and helping it to evolve at that moment in time. And then Saturday Night Fever happened, and you know, things changed from there. But I have to say that that's where actually we met, because we went on tour as the Saturday Night Fever show in 1978. We were on tour as that show. But the 70s, again, was the most fascinating time. New York was a nightmare, but it was so very exciting at that point. There was clubs everywhere, and like I said, it was word of mouth or calling someone up on your rotary phone that you had to dial that was on a thing. We didn't even have voicemail. It was, if you had an answering machine, you were cool, because it wasn't, those things didn't exist back at that moment in time. But we knew we had a way of communicating, and we made things happen, and it was ever so exciting. And hopefully we will create that feeling again, but I'm not sure that that could happen. I don't know.
I think you can.
Also following up on that, because I think it's for two very similar demographics. I've been curious why a lot of the Latin community, or like the Puerto Rican community, and also the gay community, they don't know about this history. About like, maybe it's, I'm in LA, that a lot of the Latin community I meet, I tell them I do hustle. They all think it's salsa. They think it's whatever. They don't know hustle. I'm really curious, especially once I learn like Latin hustle, and then how come? And then I'm here as a Chinese person teaching them of theirs. So I'm like, yeah. I'm curious if you know any, I guess, like reason why that's.
No, the fact of the matter is that all the Puerto Ricans and Latinos in the Bronx were doing this dance early on. They were part of the pioneers, or the pioneers. We don't really know where it started, but it started in the street. The hustle started in the street. And then the studios monetized it because they knew it was so popular. We would get into any club on any given night, not wait online, never pay to get in because they wanted us there. We were always there because we were like the show.
Entertainment.
We were the entertainment.
Can I tag on that?
Yes.
I just want to point out that in Saturday Night Fever, the couple that he loses to in his mind are doing 3-count hustle, and they are Latin. And he acknowledges that they are better than he was. And he was right. In Saturday Night Fever.
After the contest, right?
Yeah, at the end of the contest, they give him first place because he's the hometown boy. And he gives them the...
Back then, none of us watched the movie.
Right.
Any questions?
So I think, here's a question. So when you think about the existence, the production of that movie and the wide dissemination of the movie, was it a good thing for hustle or a bad thing for hustle?
Both.
Yeah.
It exposed the world.
But it did not represent us properly. That was the problem. It did not represent this dance the way we did it. They made it, it was very corny. If you watch it now, I cringe. It's just, it's hard to watch, let's face it.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Lorenzo, wake up.
I have another question. What do you think are the most essential ingredients that we need to take hustle into the next decade? When you look around and you look back.
Jackson, Tessa, Lorenz.
No, but like we talked about having a community and a place to dance and spreading it out geographically and so many other things today. Like when you look back at your time doing the hustle and things that have been successful, things that have not been as successful, what's really needed to take it to the next decade?
Everybody says, when do you think it's going to be like the 70s again?
Right.
I think everybody knows that that's never going to happen again because it was like, what's the expression, the perfect storm. It was a time that music was, everything came together. But when you say what would bring it back, probably a great movie that Frank's working on, something like that to ignite it with a great soundtrack. When was the last time you saw a movie with a great soundtrack and inspired you? It just doesn't happen. So if all those kind of elements came together, a good chance. That's where I think it would begin.
It would definitely uplift the community, yeah. Because Frank, again, is part of those pioneers from the Bronx. And he just wrote his story. It's a true story. And, he was dancing this back in the 70s, traveling the world and on TV. And it's all going to be in his next film called A Boy and the Mirror Ball.
But once you find people, you need to have venues. You need people promoting parties. You need DJs.
Well, they pop up when...
You need, like, the
When the
underpinnings,
explosion happened
too.
back in the day, every Italian restaurant became a discotheque. They pushed aside the tables, everything started to morph, and they created because they saw the opportunity. And they saw the demand, and like Lisa said, they monetized it. They just took that opportunity, availability and demand, so they created it. So there's corporations out there that will jump on it as soon as they see the value and opportunity. But it's got to be there.
And something else that I was thinking about is, I hope you guys don't cringe when I say this. I don't know what.
OG?
No. Modern house music. I was thinking about there's some places in Orlando, lots of places in Orlando. If I could get some people dancing,
We like house
bring
music.
bring them to these places, and once we start dancing, they'll maybe generate some interest, and then they'll say, "Hey, I want to run that." Hopefully, what do y'all think?
That's actually what we did up in Massachusetts when it died down. We would find a club that would have a dead night, usually a Tuesday, and with the DJ we'd ask for what we could dance to. And then the management liked us because we were the show, and there's all these people that would start coming on Tuesday nights because there's this really cool thing to watch, all these people were dancing. But I will say that it always has a limited lifespan. What happens is the Tuesday night takes off, and then they don't want the dancers so much anymore because we don't drink as much as the people watching the dancers. And then we'd have to move on and find another club or hotel or whatever to do the same thing.
Anyway, to get to that point a little bit, music. Sometimes what we tried to do was go along with the new music that was coming to try and attract more younger people. So we would go into contemporary music. We were more house and classic music back in the day, where it had more of that hard beat than just that. Yeah. That yes. So, you know, now with today's music, it's too leveled. Sometimes it's too leveled and you can't feel the excitement. Yeah, so although we still try to keep it upbeat and new, what a lot of DJs are doing now is mixing old music and developing a different kind of style and rhythm to it. So it's starting to grow. I don't know how successful I could say it truly is. A DJ might say more about that, but that's the way I believe that the music will definitely be a big factor in this whole thing to start bringing people in.
I think that's one of the big challenges, and I think Jeff Selby was very successful attracting younger people with the new music, the new style hustle. I think someone like Lorenzo, I don't know if you want to dance to your parents' music. Usually we don't like that. People typically going to dance to their music.
Well, it's funny, my parents called it not going to the club, they called it going to the disco.
Yeah.
Well, what I would like to ask you that question, because we are like, oh yeah, we have to make the music modern to get younger people to do it. But then you were like, why are you feeling that way? They like our music. Is that true? We have 3 new gens. What kind of music do you prefer? More house, more classic, more contemporary, modern, current, or it doesn't matter as long as you're doing hustle?
I mean, personally for me, I feel a little bit frustrated. In Europe, they dance to much slower music. So it's actually just a very different dance. I have to switch my brain completely when I'm dancing with people in Europe. It's like it's totally different because of the music.
What kind of music?
What kind of music, yeah?
It's not that I don't enjoy the music that they're dancing to. It's just it feels totally.
You have to change the way you're dancing.
Yeah, so it's like
dancing
to
that
me,
slow.
R&B, like they dance a lot of house. We dance to house too, but it's obviously different, like slower house. We actually dance to Afrobeat, and Afrobeat actually can work quite well with the timing, which is really nice. And so I enjoy dancing to those different styles, but I'm aware that it's in some of that slow music, it's not possible to dance like the authentic technique. So it's a tricky one because there's a big community in Europe of hustle dancers, but yeah, it just is a very different feeling to dance there to dance here. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like a negative thing, but it's two different. They're like two. For me personally, they're like two different dances. So that's what I've learned since coming here.
So that you like. I was going to ask him, that's Vancouver. What are they playing in Vancouver?
We're playing a little bit of both, but we try to honor the authenticity of the hustle, because I know that top rings it's like weak, and some people become intimidated when it's a fast track. I love the fast track.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, sometimes we also like to play some chill music and like have like crazy cool hustle, relax. I know it's changing slightly, but like I always urge even my own students to come to New York or like learn from someone that who's actually good at stuff like that. You know, it's yeah. I feel like
What's your preference? You like them both, you said, right?
yeah, but I know my preference is here in New York. So
Jackson?
yeah, I'm biased.
Yeah, I personally prefer slower and R&B, but also might also because like I grew up on sad Chinese love songs, and and I find that a lot of actually Asians or Asian Americans do have, like, even if it's Vietnam or Korea, they have sad love songs, and I also kind of attribute like our generation tends to be much more depressed, so like the music is usually a bit slower, and it's not as much. Even in terms of drugs, it's more like weed, so it's again slower music, as opposed to cocaine and stuff, which I've learned about.
Which is what we did.
Yeah, so personally, I like to dance to like more, lovey songs, and I think maybe the friend groups I attract maybe similar to that. But I also do street dance that dances to funk and disco. So I'm also an outlier in that sense, that I do like both. But I know in general I'm kind of the outlier. And I have noticed that like in LA, I was trying to bridge like the different generations, and then a lot of like the older folks still kind of prefer disco tracks when dancing to hustle. And then our friends, just dancing at a park, they like, the R&B and whatnot.
So if you grew up to sad Chinese love songs, when you hear something like these classic hustle, lots of violins and big orchestrations, and you must be loved, is that what you like, or something different?
I also like it, yeah, because even my
Like
parents.
the romantic.
Yeah,
I
because.
always call it violin hustle.
Oh. Yeah, because my parents, they also kind of like have an idea of like what American movies, American music is like. So then they also like the American classics, because that's when, they were really trying to fit in with America, trying to beat Americans, so learning American music. So they also like that. And then for me, I think again it's because of the other dance that I do listens to that music, that I enjoy that a lot.
So we don't have a lot of time, but we can still get on a few subjects. Anything pressing to anyone that you feel like? Go ahead.
Adding one more quick one, because if disco was the main music that you guys danced to, how come hustle evolved to be a 3-count?
Evolved to be what?
A 3-count? Because isn't hustle or disco also like 2/4 or 4/4?
Correct.
Can I say what I've heard? I wasn't in that era at that time. I came a little later, but from what I heard, it originated from salsa. And when music started to change around that time, is when they cut down the count of the salsa to start making it fit into the music, the club music that was starting to play. That was what I heard.
You also
Wasn't
allow
there
more
then,
freedom.
but
The structure of the 6-count dance was more rigid and limiting, and that when they went down to the 3, it opened it up for what you could do.
opened it up for competitions, because then it made it more exciting for couples who competed than just doing a 4-count movement. So, Lisa, I think you were in that, so you would kind of understand that better with the count.
Well, the count did change, but it got faster. The dance got faster. And so, therefore, the 3-count allowed us the movement, as like we discussed in class. We used the 3-count to really move. We had a lot of momentum in our dance. It got faster as we were creating and competing, right? So the faster we were, the more exciting it was, the bigger we were, and we were performing all the time. So the 3-count allowed us that speed to create that excitement about the dance. It evolved, it was a slower dance, and then it really picked up. And that's where we kept going with it.
This is corny, but I want to mention it. I think that our culture benefited from having Dancing with the Stars use modern songs to do traditional dances. I wish they had somebody on staff who did a decent hustle. They do not. I talk about cringing. But the fact that they opened up the ballroom dances to something that you could do the music you heard on the radio, probably for monetary reasons, because Ron's on the money for that, pun intended. But it did open that, and the West Coast swing community has totally taken that to heart. A lot of the West Coast swing dancers I see, champions, are dancing to a really damn fine hustle song, but they're doing West Coast swing. But I do think that the music is key, and I think everybody's sort of touching on various aspects of it. But I do find that once, just like before, you know, if you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's going on. That's why Ron's newsletter is so helpful. You know, but then I find that people who find it and love it, they'll find. They'll keep looking, they'll find, and then we'll spread because we're spreading our love.
One more question, Lori? Is that what we're doing? One more. Who has any ask? Question?
I have a question about the counts, actually. Some people teach in 1, 2, 3, and some people seem to teach 6. So I just had a question for maybe all of you, or someone can answer, like the difference between, there is a difference between those two counts?
Could it be because of a certain pattern? That's a 6 count? We're not talking about the full dance?
Yeah.
Going 1, 2, 3? Because sometimes we do have certain movements that we count in a 6 count, than just a straight and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3 continually. So maybe that's what you're hearing. I can't, I'm just saying one of the answers.
Would you all use would you say 1, 2, 3 patterns?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I'm teaching a pattern that begins and ends within 3 beats, I usually call it's counted in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a pattern that takes a double count, I'll count it in 4, 5, 6. As far as teaching purposes, because then this is the beginning and this is the end. So I'm always jumping between. And then there's 4 count turns, and then there's 5 count turns. So alternate rhythms came about, and there was double turns, double rights. We used to always keep them on a 6 count, because if you count 1, 2, 3, you're in the middle of the turn, right?
Yeah.
So you need a 4, 5, 6 to be able to complete it. But then, and I was told that the street dancers started counting at 5s. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So people say, well, that's the way the street dancers count that turn. So I used to always tell my students, you have to know both, because you don't know who you're dancing with, if they trained in the studio or the street. And if they spin you away, they may expect you to come out after 5, or they may expect you to come out of 6, and you have to be ready. So anyway, let's have somebody else answer that. Huh? Did I answer that properly? Are you all okay with that?
Well, I would say that there was someone who did, they were from the ballroom world, and they did insist that hustle be counted in 6. Thank you. And I think that was an acknowledgement to the swing route, because that comes in 6. And there was a lot of people in the hustle community that disagreed, because we basically only use 6 if the movement is particularly needs 6 beats to accomplish, and otherwise we can shift from one thing to another in just 3, because this thing's done, and then we're moving on. It's the best mix and match wardrobe dance there is. Start with something, turn it into something else, and end with a 3rd thing. So, but there were teachers who were insisting that it be counted in 6, but it was a minority on the whole.
Now, count-wise, there is 1, 2, and 3. What do you think of that?
There was a big war between that. I have an answer if you don't mind on that one at all.
That's a certain syncopation, so.
Skippy Blair
movement.
liked to teach it that way.
Well, there is a difference, and I grew up with people counting at 1, 2, and 3, as well as some periods where we had 1, 2, 3. My answer to that is that from a follower's perspective, they think of it as 1, 2, and 3, because on the and one that we use, they have usually a little bit of a lull there before the next thing happens. But the leader on our and one is making their positioning, they're starting the next thing. It is really and one. It is about the next step. The follower hasn't perceived it yet, because it usually registers between the 1 and the 2 for them. So if you have to decide between counting in favor of a follower or counting in favor of a leader, you should go with the leader because they're leading. So there was a period in the 70s where throughout the country, some people were saying 1, 2, and 3, and some people were saying and 1, 2, 3. The dance looks different if you think you're ending on a ball change and it's not about the next move, and that's not correct. So we went with the leaders, and now we're pretty much all doing it 1, 2, 3.
The first forum that I remember was at World Hustle Championships, Diane Nardone's event many years ago in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I was asking Ron, we were very obsessed with having this forum. There were issues we wanted. How do we build a community? How do we get the younger people dancing? What kind of music should we play? Yeah, and so it seems like a new thing, but we did try and do this years ago. And then Shay did one in the LA Hustle Congress, and I thought it was a great idea, and people seem to like it. Do you like this idea of listening to people and getting? I mean, we need to talk more, don't we? We just get together, we dance, and like I said, we don't even know who are you. I don't know why. But talking, I guess it's good, right? Did you enjoy this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.